Sure thing.
Perfect. Alrighty. Welcome to Kevjet the podcast. Sean-Meister, President and Chief Exec of Global Bluenosers.
How's it going? Great to be here.
It's going. We're in February now, so we're proper winter time. However, we're very wet and damp here in London, and you're very, very cold and snowy in Nova Scotia.
I am so stereotypically Nova Scotia in my weather right now, and I mean it has to be a Nova Scotia conversation to start with the weather. So yes, it is snowy, it is cold, it is a proper winter in Nova Scotia right now.
I was saying to you just before we were recording that I miss all the snow. I miss having that proper winter, and yeah, it's making me homesick.
I missed it for sure. Like that was what I grew up with. I would say that as I've gotten older, my back doesn't miss it. In the winter time from shoveling. So I've graduated to the snowblower to save my aging back from the labor of that. But I mean, it is really nice. I've got a young daughter to like see the kids out enjoying the snow. It feels like the winters I remember. So it is pretty great, to be honest.
Just to clarify something here, just for my listeners who aren't from the east coast of Canada, and they're saying, "Did he say blue nosers? What is what is a blue noser?"
Yes, it is one of those things. If you know what it is, you're kind of in the crowd. So Bluenosers is what we are commonly known as. So for people from Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada, we're right out there on the edge. Obviously, Newfoundland is a little further out on the east than us. But if you are a Nova Scotian, your nickname is that you're a Bluenoser. And I've read a few different origin stories for it. For me, it's just that's who we are. It's sort of how we sort of know each other. That's what we call each other. It's a term of endearment for identity. Is to be a blue noser, and it's got to be one of the weirdest ones. Anytime I've said it, every time I've introduced myself as the founder of Global Blue Nosers, if you're not a Nova Scotian, you get this head tilt, and people are like, "Global what?" And I'm like, "Okay, well now we have an opening for a conversation."
It's true. It's true. If you ever said that in a different country, it would have to be a Nova Scotian that would turn and look at you. Otherwise, people think you're crazy.
I mean, it's the strangest word. It's everyone's just like, it doesn't sync up when you say it together. But what I love about it is it totally unintentionally is that when you say it, if you're in a crowd, the people that are from or love Nova Scotia or have an affinity for the place, they'll just come out of a crowd. They're like, "Did you say Blue Noser?" Especially if you're somewhere else in the world, and they'll be like, "Wait a minute." And it's amazing how that word is just so deep within for us as an identity. It's very interesting.
It is. It's and right away, it's where are you from? Which part?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Where are you from? Who's your father? All the
exactly.
fun stuff that we talk about.
It totally is. It totally is. How did Blue Noser? How did that come about? How did this whole thing start?
I mean, I would say it's a fairly long journey to get to the official thing. I mean, it all comes from a place of I grew up in Nova Scotia. I grew up on a farm in rural Nova Scotia in a tiny little town called New Ross. If you know it, you know it. You probably only know it because there's a provincial museum there that demonstrates old time farming. But I grew up there, worked on farming and forestry and on Christmas trees and all that fun stuff. Went off to Acadia University in the Annapolis Valley, and I did what so many Nova Scotians have done, which is immediately following my degree, I realized I had to move away. And so I graduated right into the early stages of sort of the early 2000s recession, like 2007, 8. And so I went west. And I would say Global Blue Nosers probably started there because the second I left Nova Scotia, I realized how different we were and how much we needed each other as a people, and how our identity was so central to everything about ourselves, from social right on through. So I spent 10 years living away, sort of always trying to find a home for myself that had an East Coast flair, and it was really hard to find except through sort of alumni channels. And when I moved home in 2017 with my family, that kind of was in my head. It was always in my head about, this community of Nova Scotians that I kept meeting and how we were so different than a lot of expat communities where we would be 20, 30 years away from home and people would call it home. It's like you bump into someone from Calgary and it's like, "Oh, where are you from?" They're like, "Well, I'm from Nova Scotia." And I'm like, "Oh, you're visiting?" They're like, "Oh, no, I've been gone for like 35 years, but I'm home is Nova Scotia." And so that had just kind of been in my mind for the whole time I moved home. I worked in economic development for the province and was kind of leaning into the value of identity as a way to help push Nova Scotia forward on the global stage. How do you get, better access to those rooms that are decision maker rooms globally by using your networks of Nova Scotians to get into those rooms? Um, and then the pandemic hit. And that's where I really started to lean into posting on social media, especially LinkedIn, about Nova Scotia, how much I loved the place, how thankful I was to be here. And all the Nova Scotians who literally couldn't come home anymore flooded into my inbox. And I just started having conversations just like this. And so Global Bluenosers, the actual thing, that brand and identity, started as a podcast because it came out of this where I was having all these conversations and I was like, well, I need to start recording these because it's spectacular. And so back in April of 2023, started recording podcast episodes, not knowing what I was doing, but just hit record and start talking. And it just evolved from there. It evolved into meetups around the world. So starting to fly out and trying to bring people together and, feed that thing that I wanted when I was away, which was others like me, others that understood where I was from, the people that I could sit and talk to. And so now we've flown around the world. We've done 9 events in 5 countries. We've brought together about 600 people at those events, all with some sort of connection to Nova Scotia. They grew up here or they went to school here. And we've now evolved into a not-for-profit or a federal not-for-profit organization. So all from just talking to people during the pandemic. So that's kind of where it started. It really started from my own journey of being somebody that left home.
What does one of your meetups look like?
It I mean, I say it's like upscale kitchen party. For people that understand a kitchen party, understand Nova Scotia culture is a lot of the best interactions happen in the kitchen or around a table, around food and drink, and that's where we really build connection. And so when I started to do the events, I didn't want it to be any more complicated than that, except it was to the point where I was really targeting people that were living and working abroad. So it was professionals and everything. So it was like people were coming from work. So maybe a few more suit and ties than we're used to in a kitchen in the South Shore where I'm from. But at its core, it's really just about bringing people together. So yeah, it's a room full of people with food and drink, with me saying as little as possible because I don't really like standing in front of a room, but, it's just about creating space I think we all look for it, but it's hard to carve that time out ourselves. So for me, it was create the event is sort of a gift to the community. It's like, I'll create the space and you just come and meet and connect and find those, like, 2 degrees of separation amongst, essentially everyone that's a Nova Scotian.
It's true, and I have to say, over here in London, I do lots of work with Canada House, and, there's lots of events that happen, and the Maritimers always find each other, and they always stick with each other. It's just one of those things. You can be in a room with 300 people, and the 2 people from Halifax or 2 people from Lunenburg are gonna run into each other, and you're best friends for life after that.
It really is true. It's like I always kinda joke is like I could hear an accent from a block away when I was living out west. Is like when I was in Calgary, it was like you could just sense when someone was from home, or someone had, lived in Nova Scotia for a long time, and you can just you can pick that up, and that was kind of the thing for me. London has been one of the probably the most popular destinations that I've done for the event. So now we're about to have our 3rd annual event in London, and it's always the biggest one we have. And it was one of at the first one we did, that's what everyone said is like, there's tons of Canada events, but they're like, we really wanted a maritime. We wanted an East Coast event, because then we knew coming in, everybody got us. And so it's a little something different. Now it's a little bit higher energy when you create an entire room full of us, because as you would know, we talk loud, we talk fast, we like our music loud, so it gets a little rambunctious. which is even more fun because, a lot of our lives are maybe a little bit more buttoned up, and so you get to just kinda cut loose and be with the people that really get you. So I find them to be a ton of fun, and I feel super humbled that I get to go out and do it and sort of, like, be the person in the corner watching because I'm not living in those cities, but I get to see what it does for folks that are all living there.
Yeah, of course. I saw that you had events in 2025 in places like, Calgary, Ottawa, but then you threw in Dubai.
Yes, that was on my list for so long. Yeah, I really wanted to do Dubai because I part of this whole process, while it's been really fun and grassroots and sort of like building the plane as we're flying type of thing, is I've also spent a ton of time in the sort of diaspora space, which is, really trying to understand how big is our community of East Coasters because for me, as much as I love the power and impact it has for us individually, it also has a ton of power for us as a region to engage with those that have left. And so I spent a ton of time looking at where are we? Where are the clusters of us? And there's the obvious ones, like obviously Toronto, Calgary, London, and Dubai was one that whenever I said it, people were like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, there's a lot of us." And especially when you really you look at identity, as I always say, it's Nova Scotian by birth or by choice, because we've got this real value in Nova Scotia is we have so many universities that so many people come in and spend 4, 5, 6 years in Nova Scotia, and they fall in love with the place and they become Nova Scotian. So when you broaden that identity definition, I looked at Dubai and I was like, "Yeah, that's a city I've gotta go to." And so we did that in November. It was my first time going to Dubai, and it was great because it was cold, and I got to go there, and it was, like, 30 degrees, which was awesome. But we had a great turnout, and it was, yeah, a room full of Maritimers. We're everywhere.
What do you find is the biggest industry that people move away to work in?
Oh, that's a tough one. I see a lot in finance, so sort of the broader finance space. You see, especially coming out of universities like Dalhousie and stuff like that, you got a lot of people coming out with accounting and business degrees. So a lot in finance. See a lot in tech. See a lot in health. So like whether it's pharmaceuticals, life sciences, things like that. So see a lot in that space. And then if you go into other, also depends on the regions. Like if you go west, you see a lot in energy. If you go down to Texas, which was my first event, was in Texas. You got a lot of people working in that broader energy, oil and gas sector, engineering, things like that. So, yeah, it's a pretty broad spectrum, but you've got a lot in those fields in particular.
Am I right in saying that you had a meetup recently for people who came back to Nova Scotia?
Yes. Yes, I did. We called it the boomerang Bluenosers, because I always say the journey is sort of you're either an arrow or a boomerang. If an arrow, it goes out and it lands, boomerang, it'll eventually come back home, and so, yeah, we hosted it in Halifax, back in October, and I think one of the first of its kind to do that, and so we had a great turnout at Good Robot Brewing, which is a big partner of ours in Halifax, and that was equally interesting because it was the first time I did it. I'd been home, for since almost 8 years,
Yeah.
and I never thought about doing an event for people like me that had, because that it's about shared experience, and
Yeah.
so bringing people together that had done that experience of going out and coming back, that was also really unique because you get to talk about how different is it to come home because we all come home changed by the experience of leaving. And sometimes when you come home, you don't realize how much you've changed or how much the place has changed, and it can actually be a bit of a reverse culture shock. And so for me, it was okay. How do we, I really feel that bringing people together, a community is what makes people stronger. And so if you bring people together that understand you, who give you a safe space to just talk and be kind of vulnerable, you're gonna feel more grounded and happier. And so that's really what it was all about, was let's create a space for people to maybe say those uncomfortable things, which is like, I was expecting to be super happy when I came home, and then I spent 6 months being kinda depressed because everything was different.
Yeah.
Um, so it was, yeah, it was a really interesting and fun event, and is gonna be something we're continuing to do here in the provinces, supporting that returning group of people.
Right. And are there a number of those people that are interested in traveling abroad and getting involved with the Blue Nosers, the global?
Yes. So it's interesting. We are a very transient group. We like to travel. And so the folks that have returned home, it's interesting. A lot of them will be working in jobs where they're supporting companies looking globally. So they've already got a global mindset that they're bringing back. So then right away they're going out and doing business, and so they're like, let me align it with your events because that's perfect. I'll tap into that community as part of
Yeah,
my new job that I've come home. We also get people that travel from the other hubs. Like I said, we have these hubs of people all over the world, and London is actually one of the best ones for it. Is you see people travel from Ottawa, from Copenhagen, from Germany into London to be at that event. Similarly, because one, it's they want to experience it, but two, there's a business and professional value of being able to come into a space and do that. So yeah, we've seen it was unexpected, but we started to see people getting on planes and wanting to be out experiencing these events and meeting these folks that have left home and decided to call a new part of the world their second home.
right. Wow. That's one thing that we do very well, for being Blue Nosers as well, as once we get to meet each other, we help each other out. So we're like, "What what industry are you in? What can I do for you? What," and we just network.
We're we're so good at that, and it's the thing that I find interesting about East Coasters, we're always considered such friendly, great people, and I agree, we are incredibly friendly people, and within ourselves, the thing that I found really interesting in this community is that there's an embedded trust when you meet someone from home, when you're not at home, and so I if I would travel for work in the past and I would land in a city and I'd never met somebody, I'd reach out to 'em on LinkedIn. I was like, "I'm coming to Berlin, um, and I see that you grew up in Sydney or in Yarmouth or whatever. Could we get a coffee? Could we go out for lunch? I would love to pick your brain." They clear their calendar. They're like, "We're not just going out. I'm gonna take you someplace real nice. I want you to see this." So they right away, it's that bring you into the family. But there's this embedded trust that in anyone in their lives knows that trust is so hard to build. We just trust each other, and it's unspoken, and it is what makes it so powerful as a network, and it's what makes it such a impactful place here is that when you come here and you really embrace Nova Scotia and you embrace Blue Nosers, they just bring you in, and you're not gonna experience it like that anywhere else is just how warm and welcoming and trustworthy it can be.
It so is, and we bring our our whole being of Nova Scotia to the city or country we moved to. I've witnessed it here just living in London, where you move here, you don't know a single person on your street. And before you know it, I'm having the street barbecue every summer, and everybody on the street is here. And my house is like the drop-in center for coffee during the day. And it's just one of those wonderful things. And people would often say, before you moved here, we never even spoke to one another on the street.
Yeah. It does come back to that very basic element of how much community means to us, and I think, we've added this label of community to it in so many ways that we do it, but that's kind of been our experience is that we exist, and I think because of us as a province, we're small, we've always been kind of that, like, us against the world mentality in Nova Scotia, and so the only people we have to rely on are the people next door and the people on the other streets. We have to build those bonds, and it's so critical to who we are. So yeah, that's exactly what we do. We show up someplace, and if it doesn't exist, it's like, well, let's have coffee. Let's yeah,
It's true.
I'll make some food. Like we want people to feel welcome and happy and comfortable, and it's in our nature. And so, I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all that you would do that. That's how we're built.
That's right, and then you're like, "Well, my mom's coming over. Is there anything from home that you miss?" And then your mom comes over with an extra suitcase for all these people, with all their favorite things, and that's just what we do.
Oh, I always laugh. There's like the care packages that I would get from my mom was always spectacular. She just jam them full with things, but it's those things that we need to tie us back to home. The story I always say that really brings it back for me is, we're the Christmas tree capital in Nova Scotia. If you want a fresh, real Christmas tree, the best ones come from Nova Scotia. And I grew up working in those. Well, my dad, he was somebody that really believed in that. When we were living out west, my brother moved out west first. For one of the first Christmases, my brother was gonna get his condo done up and everything. Well, my dad wouldn't hear of it to have a Christmas tree from anywhere else. So he couriered a Christmas tree from New Ross, Nova Scotia, out to Calgary overnight because he wanted to make sure my brother had that connection to home. So he had to have a tree from the farm in his condo. So he couriered it. I don't wanna know how much he spent on that to get a Christmas tree to Calgary, but that's kinda, yeah, like, those things kinda anchor us to home. So, yeah, when I'm going to a city, I always have to be careful because it's the first thing that comes in is all the requests like, "Oh, can you get this? Would you bring me this?" I mean, I had someone ask me for a certain type of Tylenol 'cause they could only get it in Canada, so I was like, yeah, we those things are so important to us to kinda anchor us in.
It's so true. I'm like, I always ask my mom for Advil
Yep.
from Costco.
Yep. It's one of my favorite things is that's what I learned doesn't exist out in the world is when people are like the get a lot of requests for pickles, get a lot of requests, one of the I mean, anything seafood related, which is hard to transport, but, yeah, it's a lot of different things that yeah, you need it because it
Yeah.
feeds that part of your soul.
Yeah, for us, for the longest time, it was craft dinner. It was like, just keep sending that over.
Who would have thought that
I know.
that we'd be, like, hankering for that? Like, that's,
I'll never
it's a funny
I'll never forget, I was just walking around in Soho one evening. We were I don't know, we had gone out for dinner with friends, and there was like it was kind of a touristy shop. It had like souvenirs. They had like candy for children, but it was just this little tiny hole in the wall. And at the
yeah.
very back, they had craft dinner boxes. And I paid something like £10 for a box of craft dinner,
Yeah,
and it was worth it.
I I think that's the best part of the statement is like, "Yeah, totally worth it. I would spend it again because it's like, you gotta have that taste."
It's so true. I'm like, "I can't believe you have craft dinner." Like, I found my dealer.
Oh my god, yeah, that's, I never would have thought that that's what, it would come down to is those basic things when you leave that you need to have.
Yeah.
I love that.
We have Tim Hortons in London now. So it's
That
it's losing its charm now because, it's just always available, but still not the same when you get to Nova Scotia and you can just pull out of the airport and then pull right into the drive-through of Tim Hortons.
Yep,
You can't do that here.
and I will always say that, whatever you're missing from Nova Scotia food, especially on the food and beverage side, it's it's never the same without the salt air around it. If you're breathing the salt air and taking the drink or taking the that's the complete experience. So, like, as even for me, like, when I was in Dubai, I got a Tim Hortons coffee when I was in Dubai because I had to.
Yeah,
I was like, "I need to see what this is like," and it tasted like it was Tim Hortons. But there's context is important, and so I think, for so much from home here, it's like, you gotta have that salt air to make it complete.
yeah, yeah, of course. You mentioned that, so where we were talking about how Blue Nosers are evolving, so you were talking about a membership.
Yes. So as the community has again, this is one of those things like I will repeat myself. You're building the plane as you're flying. Um, as it's evolved and we've started to see that there's a real value in having access to this network. One, it's impossible for me now to do the one-on-one intros anymore. So I was like, well, how do we grow this organization? So when we became a federal not-for-profit, we looked at like, okay, how do we become sustainable over the long term in terms of feeding that sense of Nova Scotia identity and giving Nova Scotians away that place? And so we decided we're going to go down the route of a membership. So we right in the middle right now of our founding member wait list. So we're going to have a group of 30 people that we bring in at the very early stage to kind of like they're gonna get the first look under the hood to tell us, are you building the model right? Really help us refine all that stuff around the events and engagement to keep driving value. And then, yeah, we're gonna open it up. We call it the community for ambitious blue nosers. So it's really about creating that heartbeat of events, virtual and in person, as well as that network, that exclusive network, to always be able to find that blue noser in the world that's there to help you, whether you just need to go and have a drink with them or you're looking to do a big deal. It's like everything along the way, but it starts from that finding the others that really get you.
I love that. That's such a great idea.
We'll see how it goes. I always say it's we can do a check-in and see on numbers in about a year or so, and we'll see if I'm smiling or crying. But it's at the end of the day, it's one of those things that it is really nice to see the validation of how important staying connected to home is for Nova Scotians, because
Yeah.
it's like, um, I was a terribly homesick Nova Scotian, and I always wondered, I was like, "Am I the only one? Is this just because of did my upbringing make me not able to be away from home?" But to see how much people, like, perk up and how much it just adds to their life when they get to meet others from home, it is, I don't know, I love being at the center of that. It's just like it validates that this makes sense, and it reinforces everything I love about being from the East Coast.
Yeah, I was very homesick for probably the first 6 months, easy. Every day I was just like, "Oh gosh, I don't know if I can stay here."
Yeah.
And, and it's always horrible when something bad happens back at home and you're so far away. Um, but yeah, I was just home a few months ago and I actually extended my trip because I just had to have some extra time there.
I mean, extending your trip in Nova Scotia is never a bad idea.
No.
It's always a good idea to do that. Um, but yeah, I mean, we had a run of some bad things happen there, especially, over the pandemic and everything, and definitely heard it from then of how hard it is to watch people hurting from afar. Um, but also, one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and it's not everybody's experience, but it can kind of be baked into it because of how close knit we are, is sometimes there can be that guilt of leaving. And so it's like, I know for me, I felt bad leaving because the talk was like, "Oh, we don't wanna lose our people. We don't wanna
Uh-huh.
lose our young people." And then I was the young person that left. And so, to really see people to be able to reengage and stay connected to home, it also kinda takes care of that bit too, is like,
Yep.
"Oh, I can still be involved. I'm still doing and helping things." Even if it's like convincing one of your friends to take a vacation to Nova Scotia, it's like, I did something for home, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't left. And so it's sometimes, it's about sort of that positive reinforcement that it's like, it's okay to be homesick, it's okay to not be homesick. It's, do you want to stay engaged? Do you want to sort of stay, true to your roots? That's all that matters. That doesn't need to have a border. It can happen from anywhere in the world.
It's quite fun on the other end as well because I get so many friends who will just fly over to London, sometimes just for a weekend, and I get to show them, like, what I do on a weekend in London, and they see, like, my version of London, which is so fun to show my friends at home.
Yeah, you kind of become that relationship manager between the world and Nova Scotia, and for Nova Scotians to the world. It's a fun kind of role to play in your life and in other people's lives. It's a
Yeah.
great way. It's a great thing to do.
Talk We were talking previously about, one of the Blue Nosers, Hannah Thibodeau. And,
Yes.
she actually I ran into her in Canada House, and we were at an event, and I was, walking down the big staircase, and anyone who's been there will know the staircase. And there were lots of people around, and she just came right up to me in the middle of the stairs and said, basically, "Who are you? Where you're from? Where are you from? I need to know." And, where we literally grew up, like, kilometers away from each other. Like, we're both from Yarmouth County, and it's just the craziest thing. And then we were
Of
best
course.
buddies for the whole, Canada Day week.
Well, that's the thing, is then you're attached at the hip. Once you find that, and with Hannah, you got a name like Thibodeau, you're pretty sure you know where that's gonna be from.
So true. And
Yeah.
anyone who met us, that week, they assumed that we knew each other forever.
Oh, that is the pinnacle example of what it's like when 2 Nova Scotians meet each other, is it takes us all of, like, 30 to 60 seconds to be like, "Well, yeah, we now know each other, we're tight, I got your back, you got mine," and
Exactly.
you could spend the whole night together just going out and hanging out, and you wouldn't even realize you didn't know the person an hour ago.
It's so true, it's so true, it was the coolest thing, and, yeah, we've stayed in touch, we're gonna be lifelong friends.
Yeah, that's how it works.
It's so true, it's so true. I've got a list of Kevjet's quick fire questions, but they actually tie into our whole conversation, so I think we should just move
Okay,
into them. They don't
let's do it.
necessarily have to be quick, but, I've got a list.
Alright, let's see.
Alrighty, let's go with Nova Scotia, or does your heart live anywhere else in the world?
Okay, well, so that's a really good question for anyone that has spent time living away and who travels a lot. So, yes, my heart belongs to Nova Scotia, but honestly, I will actually say if there's one place I like to go to as much as possible, it actually is London. So, I absolutely love London as a city. The very first time I did an event there, my wife and daughter came with me, and my daughter fell in love with London. Um, every time I'm over there, I yeah, it doesn't feel like I've traveled. I just get there and I just go right into my routine, which is always a sign for me that I'm someplace comfortable.
Yeah.
So if, that's what I've always said, if somebody, said, "Sean, we're kicking you out of Nova Scotia," which God forbid that ever happens, but if they were like, "You gotta leave," it'd probably be London.
Good choice. One word people always get wrong about Nova Scotians.
Oh my god, that is a tough one. One word, um, I'm gonna have to think about that one. I'm gonna have to think about that one. Um, yeah, I don't know. I always think what people think about us, they're pretty spot on. I think I don't know if it's a word, but maybe more of a sentiment is, you know, we are seen as, we're a small province in Canada and everything like that. So I think sometimes we can be seen as a little bit like folksy, which, we've got lots of personality for sure, but this isn't a place to sleep on. Like, this is a place that has a lot of really good, so I think sometimes we can sort of be seen as, um, just the stereotype of we're lobsters and lighthouses and sort of Celtic music, which are all things, but this is an impressive part of Canada, and we've got a lot of stuff going on, and if you look under the hood, this is an impressive community with a lot happening in driving a lot of the things in Canada. So I'd say, you know, maybe it's folksy would be the one. It I see that sometimes as maybe a not the positive side of folksy, so maybe that's the one that they get wrong when they're talking about us.
Yeah, I agree, actually. That's a good one. Because I was stumped at that. I wrote the question, but I had no idea how you were gonna answer that.
Oh, it took me a second, but I got there.
If Blue Nosers had a secret handshake, what would the first move be?
Probably grabbing a beer.
Definitely. What's more powerful, the Atlantic Ocean or a homesick Blue Noser?
Oh, I think a homesick blue noser could move the Atlantic Ocean to get home, so I'd say a homesick blue noser.
Definitely. Let's see what else. The most blue nose thing you've ever done abroad.
The most blue nose thing I've ever done. Um, I would have to say our yeah, I think this is fairly blue nose. Well, it's pretty much every event we've had at, like, a pub or a restaurant, and the very first one we did in London, didn't realize it. We shut the place down, but, like, to the point where it's like the staff were begging me, they're like, "Can you please leave?" Like, there were so many of us that were still hanging on. It's a very Blue Nose thing to stay on well past closing hour to shut a place down because we're just not done. I think that was the poor staff looked shell-shocked. They didn't know how we were still going and still talking because there were so many of us. That felt like the most Blue Nose thing we've done.
That is a very blue nose thing. If Global Bluenosers were a band, what genre of music would it be?
Oh, I think it'd be very fusion. It would be, I think 'cause the immediate gut reaction is to say Celtic music, but I think for anyone that really knows, there's a really awesome indie music scene here. So you've got an excellent sort of indie rock, indie punk sound in Halifax in particular, but across so I'd say a bit of a fusion. You take a bit of that rock punk sound that's going on in those, like, small shows all across
Yeah.
and then build in a bit of that sort of East Coast sound, throw in some fiddle, throw in a bit of the Celtic. So a bit of a fusion between those 2 worlds that I think really exist in the music scene here.
Well, the episode after this one that's going to be airing is actually Jimmy Rankin, so how
Well,
Nova Scotia.
that is awesome.
Name a Blue Noser who deserves way more than just global hype.
Oh, way more than just global hype. So are you thinking somebody that people know already or
Or it could be somebody that only you know.
Oh, that is a really solid question. I would be I feel like it's wrong to pick one certain person, which is a very Nova Scotian thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, I would say that I think the way I would describe it is since I've come home, I've realized just how many people here are working hard on the ground to make our communities better places. Like they're doing really thankless work to make life better for individuals, to try to make the economy stronger. And it's not the people that are elected into office, like they do their work and everything, but I'm talking more so like those grassroots. I even just see it at my daughter's hockey team, like the people that are showing up. So I really think there's a massive sort of social justice, but also like volunteer culture in Nova Scotia. I think everyone involved in that on the ground in Nova Scotia deserves way more of a spotlight because it's a spectacular group of people here that are trying to make Nova Scotia an even better version of itself.
Yeah. Are Blue Nosers better at leaving or coming back?
We we reluctantly leave, but we flourish when we do. Um, and when we come back guns blazing. So I think we're pretty solid at both. But we don't we're very reluctant at leaving, but it's that's the thing that has really surprised me is we don't just leave and kind of like survive. We thrive when we get out into the world, and I think that is pretty spectacular. But boy, oh boy, when you bring that energy home, you better be ready for it.
Exactly, exactly. What's the weirdest Blue Noser connection you've ever made?
The weirdest Blue Noser connection I've ever made. I wouldn't say it's weird. I think it's more so just the constant, confirmation of what we kinda talked about a little bit is at every event people that are absolute strangers to each other find the thing that ties them together, and it's often so close. It's like at our last London event, we had one gentleman who's older and retired. He had, like, hired the mother and grandmother of, like, 2 or 3 people in the room in his former just these bizarre connections where like, "Oh, I actually grew up on your street," and it's like, it's I think they're so normal for us that but I think for anyone else, it would be really weird and bizarre that you can just create any room, fill it with random people you find on LinkedIn and through social media and word of mouth, and immediately they're like, "Oh, yeah, I know your uncle. Oh, yeah, I played hockey with your brother." It's yeah, I'd say every event is filled with them.
What's something that what's something that Blue Nosers, carry with them wherever they go?
Uh, kindness, humility, um just, I really do think it's probably kindness, like, we just we enter we live our lives wanting to make other people happy, I think, at our core, and it can be hard in the world as it is right now to be focused on that, but I think we're just really good at bringing people together. We're really good at making people smile, and I personally, I think that's a superpower in today's world.
It is, and I agree with you 100%. What's more emotional, a kitchen party or an airport goodbye?
definitely airport goodbye. Those ones hurt. Those hurt so much. Um, yeah, such a mix of emotions there that yeah, you can't compete with that. Kitchen party's great, but for pure emotion, it's the airport.
It totally is. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to the Blue Nosers event here in London in next month. We're only a month away.
I know. I gotta keep promoting. We gotta get that out there. It's gonna be awesome.
March 10th.
That's right, March 10th, and hosted. I will say hosted at a venue owned by a Nova Scotian.
I read that
So
today, that and I didn't even know that, and I walked past there so many times, and I
yeah,
didn't so I'm definitely going to stop in, not just for this event, but I will definitely make a point of going in.
yeah, you got go in, ask for Ian. He's from Truro, Nova Scotia.
Wow,
He is, I mean, he's just Nova Scotian through and through. Amazing guy, and he really knew how to turn the music up loud last year. He got it going. So I'm gonna see if it's a Polish restaurant because his partner is Polish. I'm gonna see if he can figure out how to do a doner pierogi. If he can do that, I'm gonna add that to his list of things to have to try to figure out for in a month.
amazing, and he will.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he'll figure it out.
He
He'll
will.
find a version.
He will. Thanks for this conversation, and I look forward to meeting you in person here in London.
Cannot wait to meet you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
That's it.
Love it. It's always
Yeah.
weird being on this side of it.
I'm just gonna hit stop 1 second.